Hey, toy fanatics! I'm Tay Ray Gun. I'm here with another review video, and so what I did is I actually got a gift for my wedding anniversary from my wife that she picked up at Target.com, and I'll put a link for this at the bottom in the description. But this was something kind of near and dear to my heart when I saw another toy reviewer looking at it, and I said I've got to have one of those, and so. To kind of give you a little bit of background, I've always loved Aliens and Predator. And when I was a kid, I had a few of the Alien toys from Kenner. Here, probably 10 years back, I helped some of my friends over at Freaks and Geeks. That was a company here in Denton. Put together some of their toy room and help identify some things. And so I got credit for some of the things like services I traded and fixtures I traded for them. And ended up getting almost the entire run of the Aliens line. So with that, I kind of got into Aliens and I started looking. I said, oh, I got to get these Predator toys too. Then I turned around and I found a whole bunch of Predator stuff. And Neca has just recently put out one Predator and one Alien toy. The Predator toy is actually from Predators and the Alien toy is actually from Alien Covenant. And they're done in the vintage style. So today my review is going to be on the Berserker Predator by Neca Toys. And I can't wait to dig into this. Okay, looking at the Predator toy in the package, you can see that it has very much like the classic Predator look. So you've got the watercolor style or gouache drawing of the Predator here. You have the original Predator here, the Ultimate Alien Hunter. And of course this new tag list, no, this is new. Of course, the name of the Predator, and then some things about it. So, removable mask and spring activated cannon, which is pretty cool. And then down here, much like the style that we would have had with Kenner, instead we have the Neca here, which is very nice, along with the digital kind of blast in the background. And of course, over here to let us know, this is for adult collectors. It's ages 17 and up. Everything is beautifully packaged in there. The Predator's actually weighted really nice with the background piece where he's lifted up. Mask, cannon, blade, which does come separate and you have to assemble it in, and of course his laser bolt. Pretty good likeness of the Berserker Predator from the movie Predators, and I can't wait to dig in. Let's take a look at the back. On the back, you know, very much like the vintage style carding here, we've got our classic series, so kind of how they did the Colonial Marines tag here, but this says classic series. And the other one available in the vintage style is the Neomorph Alien, which I am after. Of course, Ultimate Alien Hunter, Predator, and a little bit of background on it, which is very similar to the original carded background or the original carded figures. Here we do have the Aliens lineup of other figures in the Aliens part of the line, including Sergeant Apone there in his classic style. And then other Predators here, of course, our glow-in-the-dark Stalker Predator, and then the hard-to-find Laser Shot Predator from the vintage line. And then if you go down to the bottom again, replicating the old Kenner look, we have the Neca here. And then it says three things here. So we've got... right here it talks about attaching his mask on, so it just supposedly snaps onto his face, putting the laser bolt into the cannon, and being able to fire with a spring action button on the back. And that's all we have for the outside of the box. I'd say let's open this up and check it out. Okay, and this is pretty much what we get with the toy straight out of the package put together. Now, this thing does have articulation in the head, shoulder, thigh, and waist, much like the vintage toy. However, there is one added area of articulation, and that comes over here in the wrist, okay? Now, things to keep in mind with this toy are this. The mask, blade, shoulder cannon, and missile are the accessories. And very much like some of how the Neca's toys have been, this is really much a collector's toy more than just a play toy. Despite the fact that it's done in this vintage style, it still doesn't hold quite as well as other Neca, I guess, it doesn't hold quite as well as the Kenner toys do. Okay, so we do have accessories that fall off. One first part to note is actually this right here. Now, this actually fits right here into the gauntlet, and it kind of sticks into place. And you can press it in, and it holds fairly well, the wrist articulation, but the first time that there's any sort of hit, that will actually come off. So this is one of those pieces I could see that would get lost very easily. So this is not something that you really want to like maybe have your kids play with, or you know, have it run around the house if you want to keep all the pieces. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with the mask, much like the vintage Predator mask, this actually has kind of an indentation here that fits into the face. Now, it's not as sculpted in as the Kenner ones are, but it's still fairly sculpted with a little bit of room right here for the mandibles. Now, the mandibles are actually sculpted on as a bottom piece of the jaw here, if you look, and they could possibly snap off if the glue isn't done well enough. So, press that in, and you see how it holds over the top of the mandibles, and of course over the face really well. So it does hold fairly well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I could imagine though, after a while, enough putting on, taking off, that it's going to scratch some of the paint on this, okay? So we'll leave it off right now. Now this part, the cannon actually fits onto this tab here, onto the shoulder, and it's set to where you have, let's see, that shape here is supposed to match that shape there. So you know that the cannon's supposed to go forward and just kind of presses into place, okay? So it sits onto a shoulder like this and sits right there as well, okay? And it does a pretty good job. It's a little oversized. Now, I initially thought that this was going to be articulated, but it doesn't actually move. However, it does tend to fall off pretty easily, so that's something else to keep in mind. The missile itself, looking at it, I figured, oh, this can fit any way. It actually doesn't. It actually has to fit with the two flames here off to the side like this. Press it in, and hey, I think I got it right in the camera. So it's got a pretty decent amount of spring fire to it. I had to get this thing just in just right. There we go. And oh, now it doesn't want to fire for me. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I love the blue gradient. It's hard to see, but there's white, a little bit of blue gradient like this is a fireball. Though there's a part of me that wishes that all this had been kind of the same color as that. Instead of it being two pieces, I think it would have served better as being like maybe a spear or like one solid flame bolt. But you know, again, I'm happy with what I got. So again, once you put it all together, you kind of get this number. Again, cannon falling off, and then the blade on the arm, right? Okay. Now, let's look at articulation. Articulation in the neck. So if you look here, what's good about this, unlike the vintage Predator toys, the hair oftentimes stood in the way of articulation. Whereas here, they've sculpted this out enough that it's got a good range of motion in it, which is nice. But we'll go ahead and say that the joint on this is really thick. So when you first do it, you might take a little bit of time turning the head so it doesn't break. Arm articulation rotates here at the arm, rotates at this arm, and this arm on mine was a little bit loose. I don't think all of them are going to be that way. And then of course wrist articulation here. The waist articulation, it is fairly tight, but it is articulated in the waist, but I probably wouldn't push it too much. And then of course you've got leg articulation here. It doesn't go back all the way because, again, the loincloth does stop it, which is not unlike the vintage toys. Now, this is posed a little bit out, so when you stand him up, he will be posed with one leg kind of out, just like that. And that's pretty much the review of the Neca Berserker Predator action figure, which I thought was pretty cool. I did bring a few of his friends to kind of compare him to. I've got the Predator from the Predator Hives War. So you can see, like, height-wise, they stand about the same height and kind of done the same style, which I thought was pretty cool. Same kind of airbrushed paint application on them, so they would fit in pretty well. Brought him, and then I brought, of course, the Renegade Predator, which, if you remember in the movie, the Berserker Predator was actually bigger. So you could see that, you know, he would stand almost, I guess, a half a foot or so taller than the Renegade Predator, which is right. Now, Renegade Predator is also kind of squatted a little bit more than Berserker Predator, but I could see where these two go nicely together. Then, of course, my favorite Predator out of the original Predator series, the Lava Planet Predator. So I decided to go ahead and show this one because I wanted to show how in the past they've had cannons attached with the articulated arm that makes this all movable, and then of course has a spear on it, versus the Berserker that actually has the more or less movie accurate cannon and then a flame ball. So that is a big difference between these. So keep those things in mind. So that's the Neca Berserker Predator, and kind of all wrapped up. It's a pretty good addition. I can't wait to see it in my cabinet with my Kenner Predator action figures, because I think it would fit in just nicely. And so, yeah, that's it. And in true Talking Toys fashion, remember, this isn't a doll. It's an action figure. I'll see you next time. If you like what you see, be sure to hit that like button. Also, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'll have more of these toy videos coming to you soon. This episode of Tay Ray Gun was sponsored by Marvin Dog Media. To learn more about Marvin Dog Media, visit www.marvindogmedia.com.